Hey, good morning, Adam. How are you doing?
We're doing awesome today, Ro. How are you?
Adam and I are on coaching calls together, and I know that you have a fabulous history. So you started out dog sledding, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so got into lending right in 2008, right after the crash. Ran dog sleds up in Alaska for a little bit, and actually broke my wrist and couldn't work for a season. So I came back to Village Town for a frat party, out of all things, and ended up meeting one of my friends who was in Yellow Book advertising sales, and he said, "Hey, you should always be in sales." So people had said that my whole life. So anyway, I got into advertising sales with Yellow Book, and that was in like September of 2008, right after the crash. And 2 months later, they let go everybody that they'd hired in the
Oh,
last year. And realized I never wanted to work for anybody else ever again. So got into real estate.
so Adam and I started out in the real estate world around the same time. So I started in 2007. And
Okay.
just so you'll know, if you don't remember, that was the big crash in real estate. Everybody thought we'd lost our minds, right?
Exactly, right? Yeah.
It was incredible. And it was all about going to a higher level. In some ways, it was better to come in as a new individual, as a new agent or a new loan officer in those times, because you didn't know what you didn't know. And we just want to
100%,
help
exactly.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody else was comparing, the great times to the terrible times. And it was, I was in my early 20s at the time, and I was just a knuckle dragger. I didn't know anything else, so I just worked. But yeah, you just worked through the problem and didn't realize you were getting kicked in the teeth until it stopped.
Oh my gosh, isn't that correct? So tell us where you're licensed now.
So the majority of my business is in New York State. That's where I reside, up in the Adirondack Mountains. But we also do loans in across Lake Champlain over in Vermont, and we do a lot. A lot of people move down to Florida, so we're licensed in Florida, and we're also licensed in Alabama. So do kind of loans all over the country, and we're actually pending our license in Colorado right now. So
Wow.
yeah, so just slowly growing as people are moving out and away. New York's not always the best place for business, so some people are relocating and
Yes.
trying to follow our customers, so to speak.
Oh my gosh, if you guys want to see the best picture of Adam and his friend in a canoe, this is Adam Crossley, Crossley.
Yep,
Look him up on Facebook and take a look at the picture of him in a canoe on the lake. Which lake was that?
that's right on Lake Champlain.
Lake Champlain. Yeah,
Yep.
it's a postcard. It's so beautiful. Of course, we're in the mountains here as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about interest rates. That's all we all want to hear.
So, today's, end of April, beginning of May, and, rates are continuing to get lower. The market's really started to stabilize again. It was pretty crazy over the last month and a half. But right now, 30-year rates are down into the low threes. I mean, even a bad rate today is like 3 5/8, 3.625. So, there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of people to refinance their house. We're seeing a lot of people keep the same payment right now, Ro, and they're literally shaving like 5 to 10 years with the
Oh,
same payment, keeping the term the same and kind of structuring the refi a little bit different. Some people are going down into like a 15-year loan, 10, 15-year loan,
yep.
and those rates are in the mid to high twos right now. So, I mean, money is just
Okay.
about free. Exactly. And,
I did it
even some,
personally.
yeah.
It's awesome. So I took my mortgage and I refinanced it. I kept the payment the same, and I went, wait for this. I went from a 30-year to a 15-year. I shaved
Wow.
15 years off it.
That's
And
nuts. That's
yeah,
crazy.
I dropped PMI and all that good stuff, and I had a little bit of appreciation in my house, so I could. That's the other thing to consider, that when you're able to drop PMI, which is if you don't have 20% equity in your
That's
house,
correct. Yep.
and often people get hit with that when you're going to take out a mortgage, you don't have 20% to put down, so you're
Yep.
paying PMI. If you've had your house a while, or that doesn't really matter, it's where the market is. If you've got appreciation in your house of 20% or more, you can
Yep.
get rid of that PMI, and that can be hundreds of dollars a month alone.
Well, in the last few years, the appreciation rates have been almost at record highs all over the country.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is with our customers all over the country, if they've been in their house 5+ years, let's say they went with like an FHA loan originally that has a fixed rate of 85 basis points on the MI.
Yep.
So on a $200,000 house, that works out to be about $160 a month. Well, if you can shave, even if you're only shaving half a point on rate, but you can get rid of that cost of PMI and flip it from an FHA to a conventional, you might save $200 a month or 10 years. I mean, so there's just it's kind of this perfect culmination right now of, there's this tons of appreciation. The job security has been at an all-time high, and individual companies are dealing with that as people go back to work and different things. So there's lots of different variant rules depending on state and company overlays, agency guidelines right now with that, and that seems like it's changing daily. But
Yeah, really.
but there's a lot of people that have good savings and good everything else, and at the same time rates are at this all-time low, so you've got this kind of perfect storm of it's a great time to save some money, and people are doing it conservatively. Like, you and I have talked about this recently, Ro, that like in 2008 everybody was stripping their equity to go do whatever, whether it was buy jet skis or buy second homes. But now people, it seems to be in this refi boom, are being more responsible with their equity. And it's so, I mean, it's you and I are both big followers of Dave Ramsey. It seems like this is just America's getting a little bit more financially conservative right now, and it's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and it's under half of so we had over 800 billion stripped out in by stripped out we mean people have refinanced the house and said, I'd like 30,000 out, please, as well as refining it and getting a lower rate. So that's what stripping it out means. So we had over 800 billion taken out in 2008 when you got into the business, and now it's in the mid 200s. So much lower than we were back then. And we've had more appreciation on homes that could be stripped out if people were not being quite so financially responsible or nervous, or call it what you will. So what credit scores are you seeing right now? Obviously, we're in strange times right now. We're sitting at home, we're wondering about whether to remodel our house and take some money out for that. We're wondering about selling it. We're wondering about buying a new house right now. I can tell you in our market, it is crazy. We have so many people wanting to, maybe it's escape to the mountains. You're in the mountains as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's people I think are realizing that, especially with this, stay at home in this pandemic. I mean, people are realizing that they can work from home, and they can, they can work, 5 states away, or they can be, if they just got to fly down to work, or drive down to work. You're seeing people, telecommute a lot more. So I think you will see this migration to the beaches and the mountains, over in the coming years. But credit score wise, I mean, obviously, when you're looking at doing a refinance, obviously the better credit's going to make the interest rate better and your products better. But on the purchase side, agencies haven't changed their guidelines. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA. But what you're seeing right now is you're seeing a lot of individual investors, a lot of bigger mortgage companies and banks, getting rid of products. Jumbo loans have almost seized up over the entire country right now.
But tell people what a jumbo is. What amount are you looking at for a jumbo?
Well, it varies county by county, but most counties it's over 520,000.
Okay.
So in that neck of the woods, but county by county, and if you're in a high cost area, obviously near cities and things, that can be upwards of 800,000-900,000. So
sometimes it's in the 400s. So once you get into the more expensive homes, that's called a jumbo loan, and they've virtually ceased right now. That's what I'm hearing. We have a lot of people who say, is anybody out there doing seller financing? And when it's a seller's market, there aren't many people doing seller financing. That's when the seller finances it for you instead of a lender like Adam finances it for you. The seller becomes the bank essentially. And there are very few of those available because they think that they can't get a mortgage. And we're not encouraging people here to have really low credit scores and mortgage themselves to the hint. That's not what we're doing. I'm just interested what the lowest figure is that you can have and get a mortgage if everything else is perfect.
Got it. So we can actually, agencies, FHA specifically, will allow for a 500 credit score. So between a 500 credit score and a 580, you have to show that it's not layered risk and that there's a lot of other things happening. So typically, in order to make those deals work, and I've done 2 myself in the last couple months, but it's 10% or more down, and they want to see that you've been on your job a long time. They want to see that you've got good reserves. So like one of them was a guy that went through a divorce. He had 50 grand in the checking account, but his credit was just murdered through the divorce. Put 10% down, had a bunch of reserves. He's been on his job 7 years. So there's not a lot of risk. It's just temporarily the credit was down. So, so that makes sense for him.
Gotcha.
VA and FHA will go down to a 580. And 580 to 620. There's some additional overlays, debt to income wise. They're a little bit more restrictive and things. They're looking to make sure that they're still writing good loans,
Yeah.
and that the whole thing makes sense. But they're looking at the broad perspective, just not one thing. And that's the
Gotcha.
agencies themselves, Ro, and that's really going to change state to state and lender to
Yes.
lender.
Yeah.
But if you're working with a mortgage company, specifically a larger mortgage company that's underwriting right off agency guidelines, those are the companies that like I've partnered myself with, and that are really succeeding throughout this crash. Because I was talking to one of my friends who's a broker in Texas last night, and literally the guidelines are changing so fast, he's having to flip the deals. Like he's got one guy, they've literally been with 4 mortgage companies. They've had 3 appraisals in one transaction because the rules are changing so fast. They can't
Wow.
get to close without the rules changing.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're seeing that too, and closings are being moved around. And
Yeah.
that really talks to, as you're going through transactions like this, work with people who have experience in the business.
100%. Yeah.
Whether
Exactly.
they've got a few gray hairs like me or are still extremely youthful like Adam. He's still got many years in the business at this point, and he started at the last peak, went all the way through the trough, went back through the market rising, back to the peak, and now down we go again. Hopefully not like last time. Nobody's expecting that, but go for a trusted team with experience.
100%.
So thank you so much, Adam. It was great talking to you.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for having me on today, Ro. If you need anything or you ever want to have me on again, I'd love to come back. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Go enjoy the lake.
You too. Cheers. Bye.
Bye. Hey, Kurt. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm great, Rowena. How are you?
How is it in sunny Wilmington?
It is absolutely gorgeous. 75 degrees today, not a cloud in the sky, no humidity, and just voted one of the cleanest cities in America.
Wow, really? That's nice.
I'll do for you. Yeah.
A coastal city voted as the cleanest. That's quite something. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So we are going to do a fast and furious for you today. We've collected these top questions from agents around the country that are the most commonly asked questions to real estate agents. So these are both buyers and sellers asking things like, should I talk with a bank before looking at homes? We get this one very commonly.
What for? Why?
That would be a hell yes right now, right? So am I allowed to say that? I've probably been bleeped by the producer at this point.
Oh, I think you're okay.
We're in multiple offer situations. The vast majority of sellers, especially what is going on right now, we all know what's going on. We don't have to say it by name. The sellers are asking for a full pre-approval in some cases.
Absolutely.
You've got to do it anyway if you're buying a house. And yes, it's a pile of paperwork. Get that in place now. Look for those documents you need. Get it with your lender. Sometimes they're good for 30 days. Sometimes they're good for 60 days. But once you've got all those documents, chances are next time around, you're just sending them, make sure you have them scanned in or keep them in a pile handy if you like using paper like that. Just make sure you've got them because they can pre-approve you again very quickly then if it takes you 30, 90, 60 days. That you've got all your documents in place. So important, because what's going to happen is you're going to fall in love with that house, get into the house, fall in love with it. And beforehand you said, well, I'm just looking around right now. You fall in love with that house and you're going to lose out most often on the offer. Is that what you're finding in Wilmington?
Not only lose out on the offer, but let's say your offer is accepted and you've fallen in love with the house and you find out you're only approved for financing, up to 80% of the purchase price, and you can't qualify for that loan and you don't have the funds available to you to make up the difference. Now you're heartbroken because you didn't take the proper steps to begin with.
Yeah, and it really is heartbreaking at that point. And we've been through it with our clients. I'm at over 2,000 sales at this point, and I've seen it time and time again. We're saying this from experience. We're not just, reading it from some website with common questions asked to realtors. This is from pure experience. Another one we get is, how's the market? Should I buy or continue to rent? Oh, I hear prices might be going down.
That depends.
Yeah, really.
But the market's great. And depending on what price point you're in, what location you're in, The market varies from neighborhood to neighborhood. Real estate is hyper local.
Yeah, isn't it though? It's literally block to block, which can make it a little challenging, but that's what you rely on people with experience for. How many years have you been in the business, Kirk?
19.
That's quite a few. Yeah, I have to think about it. 2007 was my first full year. So we've both been doing it a while. We've both been doing a lot of transactions. So we've seen this before. And renting wise, we shared some numbers last week on the show around how much money you're spending to rent. So if you think about it, let's do easy math, $2,000 over a year, that's $24,000 that's gone to pay your landlord's mortgage. Now, it depends on, even if you think prices are going down, will they have gone down $24,000? Meanwhile, you haven't locked in that incredible interest rate that's there right now. And only you can do the math on this. You've got to look at the math for yourself, but do the math. Look at the fact that you're spending this money out and not paying down any of your principal. Can I find a rent to own property? I've got 2 buyers right now that are asking for that. And we have about 14 in our market right now that are offered for potential. This is where a seller generally does the financing. So the seller acts like the bank. It's a great way when the market's going down and sellers are struggling to sell a home, perhaps it's a little bit further out or has some challenging conditions, where you can help a buyer that maybe has got damaged credit through a divorce or something like that. That can't get a mortgage. They might have money they can put down in a large lump sum. That's generally what we advise, have 10% to put down. You don't have to, but we advise have 10% to put down if you're looking for seller financing. That puts what we call skin in the game. And they're definitely available, but there's only about 13 right now in our market. Are you seeing any of that, Kirk, in your market?
I've seen some of it, but there are challenges for both buyer and seller in that scenario. And as realtors, we have to navigate that pretty carefully, because essentially when somebody's doing a lease option, they are putting up a fair amount of money up front as a non-refundable option fee, at least in our state. And they're negotiating the price of the house based on value today for a future close. And in an appreciating market, that's a great deal for the buyer, because by the time they get around to closing on the house hopefully has gained value, and there's not going to be an issue with appraisal.
Yes.
But in an uncertain market or a declining market, and the house loses value, and you're under contract at a price that you negotiated 12 months or 24 months ago, you may have an appraisal issue, and it may cause the lease option buyer to go into default and unable to close.
So you all heard how eloquently Kirk just talked about a lease option or seller financing, where the seller finances the home for you. We've done a number of these because we went through the last market shift. So we had to learn how to do these inside and out. Just make sure if you're doing one that depends on what state you're in, of course. Kirk is in Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. If you think of the long sausage, I'm at one end and he's at the other. How many hours are we from each other, Kirk?
About 5, I think.
5 hours, yeah, we're 5 hours away. I can get to 4 different states in 5 hours. So, it's a heck of a hike across this state. But you can see he really knows what he's talking about. And I've done a lot of them as well. So just be really careful. It is a minefield. However, it's not one that we can't step through and won't step through to help you out there. We're not just looking for the easy buyers and the easy sellers out there, because we are experienced agents that have been around a while. That's the difference, I think. Susan in Texas says, I own a home. Should I buy another one before selling my current home? And there was a lot more to that question around getting bridge loans and things like that. What do you think about that, Kirk?
Oh, I think that's going to be such an individual conversation. It's going to depend on the financial means of the seller / buyer, I think, a lot. Generally,
somebody's laughing at the idea in the background there.
That's a tough call. I think that's going to be something you have to look at on a case by case basis.
Yeah, be careful, be very careful. Probably be more often would be a no than a yes, I would say, because you never know when your home is going to sell, and you've got a bridge loan. So make sure you've got plenty of cash to carry it. Or there are ways to structure it in that you can rent out your current home, which is a whole different ball game. We can give you 7 different scenarios on that, but we're doing a fast and furious on the questions today instead of a dive deep. So it's a depends. And no, we aren't talking about the underwear. I'll move on quickly from that one. Do you need a realtor for buying a home? Well, obviously we're going to say yes to that. No, you don't. You can hire your own attorney. You can navigate your way through it. Talk to a few people who have done it. Here's some real horror stories out there. Even going through realtors, sometimes we have horror stories, right?
Absolutely.
We had a recent one actually that was owned by a Florida agent about 6 months ago. There was a house where we were helping the buyers buy the home. And this particular house was being offered as a FSBO by this agent from Florida, and she had 2 friends that owned it with her as well. And when that agent bought the house as a FSBO originally, the person who currently owned it, we realized that because the work hadn't been done correctly, and this was all for sale by owner, she didn't actually own the house. She owned a tiny little parcel of land. It's the first time I've ever seen this being so messed up. So it delayed the closing by 2 months. We still managed to sort all of this out. But get this, you'll love this one, Kirk. The heirs of the people that sold, not to our client, but to the agent, still own the house. And we had to get them to sign off on it. Unfortunately, they did, but they didn't need to. They still owned the house. This was a $300,000 house.
Well, I think we all read about the house down in, I think it was in Palm Beach, a $10 million estate on the beach in Palm Beach. The buyers went to closing, bought the house, and went to move in. And I think that maybe a year later figured out that they hadn't actually bought the house that they were living in. They bought the house next door.
Oh my gosh. So you got to hear this out there. You have 2 experienced agents here telling you, be very, very careful. So if you can buy a house without a realtor. We all understand that. And just remember, if you do, be super careful. It's that clear. At least talk to an agent to discuss all of the kind of strategies that you could employ, because I'm guessing that we can think of some that you probably haven't thought of. How many deals do you think you've done in your career, Kirk?
Let's see, 19 years.
I'm going to go over to Jeff. We have Jeff here. Jeff, how you doing this morning? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you?
Good. We are talking about we're doing fast and furious questions that we've been asked over the years, and we're talking about right now, should you buy with a realtor? We started off with hell yes, and of course we would say that, wouldn't we? So we're saying be super careful, because we have probably done a whole lot more deals than you have, so we know where the landmines are and how to navigate them. How many deals have you done over the years?
Oh, I don't know. I've been doing probably 200 a year for the last 5-7 years. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now.
So that's about 1,400, 1,500 deals. Kirk's,
yeah, I would say.
I'm sure at least that. I'm at 2,000 at this point. That's a lot of deals between us where, would you all say you've seen things go wrong? Jeff, have you seen things go wrong?
Oh, yeah.
So give us an introduction to you, Jeff, where you're from, where you're helping people buy and sell houses, what your market's like right now.
I'm up in Rochester, New York, which is a bit away from New York City.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many, we can't do anything unless it's virtual.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting market. I talk to people and I try to convince them you're overpricing it, especially for this market. And then we list it and we end up with like 7 offers.
Whoa. Yeah.
Well, so much for overpricing it.
In that case, are you getting offers in sight unseen, I'm guessing?
I'm getting, the last house I listed, we got 2 offers the first day on the market. And then I had a Zoom tour the next day, and that's the one we ended up with 5 more offers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because we're all doing the Zoom tours now. We're all doing virtual tours. We're all doing what's called Matterport tours, which is a special piece of equipment that we can take around the house. And in this market, we've always had sight unseen offers. And then, you know, we scramble here as quickly as possible because so many of our buyers are out of state. Scramble as quickly as possible to get in the house and actually see it. But we are perfectly capable of taking great videos. Is it the same? No. However, we can get out and about, get in the driveway, you know, get you out onto, see whether the sidewalks are not, all those key things about the house that you're looking for. So it is still going on. How long have they got to back out, Jeff, if they don't like the house when they actually get to see it finally?
Well, so, you know, the culture is, it's interesting. Last year, we probably sold 12 homes, and we're a conservative city, but we sold 12 homes to relocating clients. And there was no clause in there where they could, you know, subject to them looking at the property. They just took it.
Yeah.
You know, now everybody's writing the clause that it's subject to them seeing the property within usually about 48 hours in my market.
Okay.
And then we are not supposed to foster it. So we all kind of like turn the other way and give the seller and the buyer their phone numbers for each other. And then they walk through and decide whether they really want it or not.
Yeah, that's the truth of what, thank you for being so honest about that, because that's what's happening in these markets right now. This is Bart from New York. Who pays the realtor fees when buying a home? Well, the realtor fees when buying a home are usually the seller, almost always. Very, very uncommon for it not to be the seller. So as a buyer, you are seldom paying the costs. We're doing a Fast and Furious today, so we're not going to go a deep dive on the 2% of cases where that isn't the case. Would you agree with that, guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. We won't deep dive on that one. So yeah, no worries when you're a buyer. What is a short sale? We did a whole show on that 2 weeks ago, so I'm going to leave that one alone. A short sale, we'll do it very quickly. This is a Fast and Furious today. The short sale is when you own a home and your home is worth less than the mortgage that you have on it. So in other words, your home is worth 180,000 and you have a mortgage for 190,000. So to sell it, you have to do what's called a short sale, and we're all experienced enough to guide you through that. How is the neighborhood area? Well, I think we should talk to that a little bit, because we aren't allowed to say a whole bunch of things as agents, right? We can't say things like walk to. That's an affront to the ADA. That's the Americans with Disabilities Act. There's all kinds of things where there are certain things we can't say. Any others you can think of, like guiding people to schools? What else can we not say as realtors?
Registered sex offenders. That's a question we get a lot, where we have to direct them to another source.
What else can we not say?
Beautiful views.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? You can't say beautiful views?
It's not recommended because it might discriminate against the sight impaired.
That's a new one on me. Well, I see, this is why I do this show, because I learn something every time. Oh my gosh. I had no idea. And the issue is that people want to know what kind of schools there are. They want to know what kind of neighborhood it is. And there's a whole lot we can't say. We actually do a thing called a listing storyboard, where we interview the seller, and you know, as a seller, you can say anything you would like to say, basically. I mean, we coach people in what to say and what not to say. You want to be politically correct in there, and you can be a lot more open with your discussion of why you fell in love with the property, what you love about the property. You definitely don't want to say, this is such a safe neighborhood, we leave our doors open. I've had somebody say that before with the address on there. We definitely don't want that. So, you know, there are things that we can't say as agents. We have tools and marketing prospects for you of different ways to say that. And of course, as far as schools are concerned, there are lots of great sites to get those scores from. Average utility bills, we can definitely get those for you. Things like the age of the property, we have on our MLSs, we have a residential property disclosure. It's called different things in different states, but it's basically something that tells you the age of the roof, whether it's got underground storage tanks, all of that kind of thing. And of course, we can dig deeper for you and provide you with all of those. I mean, we're going to have a pretty inside knowledge of what's going on in a house, right, guys? You know, I don't think anybody's going to struggle there to know what's going on with the house. As one of the reasons you can benefit from having an agent. Gosh, Fast and Furious. Let's have another one. How much should I offer the sellers? Oh, I love this one. So are we in a seller's market or a buyer's market right now, defined by 6 months or more of inventory out there?
Still in a seller's market.
We're about half and half here.
Oh, really?
Over $600,000. I think the $600,000 to $800,000 is probably a market that's pretty well balanced.
Yeah.
For 800, I think it's very much a buyer's market here. I mean, it's as fast as you can list them, they get sold.
Yeah, it's so interesting, you know, when you look at these inventory numbers out there, and for that means we look at the numbers of months that are available. So when you see these numbers, you know, to people listening out there, this can get really confusing. When you see 3.1 months on there, that is not a balanced market, right? It's 6 months is a balanced market. So 3.1 means, we did a show with all the images on this last week, means that is a seller's market. Once you tip over that 6 months, it means there's a lot of inventory out there, and it's all about supply and demand. So if there are more homes available, then naturally buyers are going to be able to come in and get a whole better deal. Are we all seeing multiple offers right now? We're all in very different markets. Are we all seeing multiple offers? We're seeing a lot of them in Asheville, North Carolina.
I see them on most every home we sell in the last 4 or 5 weeks.
All price points, Jeff?
Yeah, all price points.
Wow.
I mean, I don't do a ton in the over 500 market. Under 500, I mean, it's, you know, multiple offers, everything gets listed.
So how much should I offer the seller? That's an honest question. You know, people tend to think of old-fashioned real estate, I call it, where we go, oh, well, somebody actually marketed their house at 10% more. And sellers say this too, right? So, oh, we need to put a little bit more on there so people feel like they need to get a deal. Well, I don't know if you've all heard of it, but there's this thing called CarMax, where more people are shopping for cars now. There are CPO cars where you go in and you don't negotiate, and people love it. And on average, they're getting 3% more for the car. So a CarMax, because it has all these warranties behind it, and people actually prefer not to negotiate if they know they're getting a fair price. So that's old-fashioned real estate, where we put 10% on the price of the house, right? Especially if it's at that $100,000 price point. By that, I mean 200, 300 mark, 400 mark. And the sellers say to you, oh, let's put it at 410. What would you say to that? So that, oh, we can knock a little bit off when the offers come in. What would your answer to that be?
Well, I mean, I find that, you know, I tell people, if you're greedy, those are the ones that miss out.
Yeah.
As a rule, I said, if you go, you know, if you have between X and Y dollars, go ahead and price it a hair under Y dollars.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where you're not going to worry about giving it away, but you might have multiple offers.
Exactly. And it might just bid up. And there's nothing telling you as a seller that you can't say, this is my price, I'm holding on to it. Hold on to your price. You know what the definition of insanity is, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So, you know, there's no, oh, well, the list to sale ratio is 97%. Therefore, if we add a few percent to the house, we'll be just fine. No, just say no. You know, what are you going to say to that buyer's agent who says, oh, well, it's always been done this way? Are we doing real estate has always been done this way right now? Is that
Not anymore?
Oh my gosh. That's not the way we do real estate. Oh, there goes a doggy. And you see, these are the days we're in a pandemic, where we are doing our radio show with doggies and kids and real live human beings as real estate agents in the background. I love it. I love it.
I'm with you, Rowena. We analyze the market pretty rigorously before we recommend a price range. And my advice is always the same. We're going to price the house very close to the price that we expect it to sell for.
Yes.
And from a marketing standpoint, we're also going to look at the number to determine whether there's an even price break that we can price the house at, so that we get the most number of eyes
Yes.
on the house digitally. And then we tell the seller exactly what you just said. Hey, look, if your price is $399,000 and you want to price it at 400 for strategic reasons, and you're not going to take an offer at 398,999, that's okay.
Yeah.
But let's price it at a price that's reasonable. And if you get an offer that you're not happy with, just say no.
Just say no. It's easy, and we'll support you in that. We are not the experienced agents are not the ones who say, oh, well, you've got an offer, because we've got all kinds of offers going on. We're not dependent on that one sale. That doesn't mean say you're not important. It means that we are not dependent on that one commission check that's coming in. Therefore, you'll feel additional pressure from us to say, oh no, you really need to take that. You might not get another one. Would you agree with that? Like, how would you say that differently to people? Your years of experience in terms of the pressure they will feel through working with you do you get more support or less support from an agent that's been in it for more years?
One of the conversations that I feel very blessed and privileged to have with people is, and I'm sort of a high D, no fluff, and I don't pull any punches. And I tell them, almost every client that I work with, I don't care if you buy or sell a house with me. I am in the fortunate position that I'm going to buy a house, or I'm going to help somebody sell or buy a house today and tomorrow and yesterday and next week. And so the paycheck is not important to me. But if you are going to list your house, or if you are going to ask us to help you buy a house, we're going to make sure that we're getting you the most bang for the buck you can on the buy side, and we're going to make sure you retain as much money on the sell side as you can. And we're fortunate just to be able to help people, as opposed to, oh my gosh, my mortgage is due in 3 weeks. I have to get these people to agree to buy this house and close really quick because I need to pay my car payment.
And that's not a poke, right? The average agent does 6 deals a year. What kind of income are you earning on 6 deals a year? Now, of course, this is nationwide. It depends on market to market. Sometimes you see 9 deals a year. What would you say in your market the average agent does? And of course, a lot of these agents are working part-time, so it's not their full income that they're depending on. What would you say in your markets the average agents are doing?
I think it's been about 5 deals for the average agent, but
Wow.
In all honesty, I don't compete with the average agent. I mean, most of the people I'm competing with are hitters.
Right. But but Jeff, my point is that when people are thinking about listing or thinking about buying, many of them just call somebody on one of the big real estate websites.
Right.
And they're not thinking about the kind of experience that you can give to them that's so different. Because you're not competing with that average agent. Now, if the average agent or somebody that does 2 deals a year, or somebody who just got out of real estate school picks up that phone and takes you in, that is a whole different ball game, because there are people, I mean, it's just human nature, right? If you're doing, in Jeff's market, 5 deals a year, what's your average price point?
About 240,000.
Okay, so 3, 6, so about 8,000. And then they're sharing with their brokerage or something like that. So by the time they've paid expenses out, they're making maybe 3,000 or 4,000 a deal. Would that be about right? Let's say 3,000 just to make the math easy. What's your average price point, Jeff?
Well, for the area, it's about 135,000. For me, my average price point's about 210.
Okay, but so the average one is 135, and we're talking about, where people are doing the 5 deals. So there probably would be somewhere around, 135, 140, something like that. So we're talking about if they're being the buyer agent, I'm saying here. So I'm doing some quick math in my head here. So that would be more like, so we're talking about $2,000 to $3,000 a deal, something like that. By the time you've taken expenses out, paid your broker, all that good stuff. No, this is before taxes. So if you're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 and you're doing 5 deals, that is 10 to 15,000 for the year. That's obviously not something you're going to feed your family on, right? So even if you're doing 10 deals, you're looking at $20,000 to $30,000 a year. This is before tax. and you're running your car and got all those gas expenses and everything else. So people say that agents make a whole lot of money. We've just discussed what the average agent makes, right? If you are looking at doing, let's say you're in the $20,000 range and you're doing one deal every other month, you may feel a little bit more pressure in that case. Whereas, people go, oh, well, busy agents are busy agents. They're not going to give me enough attention. Would you say that's true? Do you give your clients less attention? Going for the elephant in the room here.
Absolutely not. We give all our clients, and we have clients that are buying or selling $30,000 mobile homes.
Yep.
And we have clients that are selling $3 million estates.
Yeah, we do too.
And the $30,000 deal, they probably get more attention than my $3 million seller because they need me more than my $3 million seller does.
So I guess my argument here is that the deal is we tell them straight. We don't just tell them what they need to hear to try and get the deal done, right? Because you have the ability to do that. You're gonna tell them straight, which is a great thing to do. Well, guys, thank you so much for being on the show. I know you're all out and about as we get through what we need to do these days with business being so different. So I so appreciate it. And I think everybody listening, and we have watchers on Facebook. We're also going to have listeners on the Saturday show that has been running for 10 years at this point. And we have people buying homes and selling homes and just listening to the show for a long time at this point from all around the country. Of course, particularly from the coast in the Carolinas, particularly from Florida. So a shout out to all my Floridians listening, a shout out to all my Texans listening, a shout out to all my New Yorkers listening. I think 25% of my area are New Yorkers. The vast majority of our buyers coming in are New Yorkers. Lots have second homes here as well, down here in the mountains. So big shout out to all of you around the country. Stay safe out there. Hey, Vince, how are you? It's lovely to hear from you in this social distancing world. This is one of my wonderful commercial lenders here with us today.
Hey, Rowena, how are you? Glad to be on your show today. Sorry, I couldn't get the camera working properly, but my friends have told me I have a face for radio, so that might be more appropriate.
So what are the client struggles you're seeing out there, if any, Vince? Is everyone doing okay in your world? I know you work with people around the country.
So far, there's been pretty much a big blessing across the board as far as the illness itself. It's not impacted in a direct manner as many of my clients as I think probably 6 or 8 weeks ago we'd have anticipated. But having said that, I think most of us would say we know of someone, or we may know someone directly that has had the virus.
Yeah.
But all of us can probably say we know a lot of people who've been negatively impacted by the economic shutdown at this point. So on that note, yes, we have seen a lot of folks. The majority of folks are in a position now that they weren't in several weeks ago, where they're stressed. They're concerned. They're feeling some of the hardship at this point financially.
Yeah, it is a bit like Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of separation, isn't it? And I think you're right. I don't know anyone that hasn't been financially impacted that's saying, "Oh yeah, it's business as usual." Maybe there are a few companies out there. I'm sure that's the case. And let's look at where we're at right now. It's Saturday, so we roll out onto Saturday, 9th of May. They're talking about a possibility of starting phase 1 in the Carolinas. Most states around the country, and I know we have listeners from all over the country, so obviously all our states are different. And here, there is no firm date yet. However, we're aiming at May 9th to be phase 1. Phase 1 will go on for 2 to 3 weeks. That's where we'll still have the stay-at-home order in place. There'll be some retailers opening up at that point. Parks will be opening subject to gathering limits, which they're saying will be 10 people. We're recommended to use face coverings. And of course, teleworking is encouraged. And then we go on to phase 2. And depending, again, all these dates, are up in the air right now. There are no decisions. We go into phase 2 where restaurants start to open, limited opening of restaurants, where they have to follow strict safety protocols. That's reduced capacity. In other words, less people in the restaurant. And that would be at the earliest, even if 9th of May is the date, at the earliest, the 23rd of May. From the 3-week that they say it may be in phase 2 after phase 1, that would make it the 30th of May. And then we go into phase 3 where restrictions are lessened. And at that point, they'll allow increased capacity, increase the number of people allowed at gatherings. But of course, all this is up in the air. And 4 weeks after phase 2, that puts us at June 20th. 6 weeks, coincidentally, maybe, we're at July 4th when when we go into phase 3, which is kind of interesting, isn't it?
It's this obviously has to be a very difficult decision for those that are in the position to open this up or make that decision whether to open up or not. I don't envy their decision ahead of them, because you talk about being boxed in. This is the quintessential definition of being boxed in.
Yes.
There's really feels like there's no right decision. I mean, I think we can all of us who touch business or work in business, whether we own small business or you touch small business like I do, it's the heart of what I do. We all feel this real urge at this point. There's an itch to get back to work for a myriad of reasons. One, work gives us purpose, and I think none of us like to sit around with no purpose. And then obviously there's the lack of revenue, lack of income, and the insurity that brings that really is that driving force for most of us. I've got to get up and have a purpose today, and I've also got to get up and provide for, whether it's my own family, my own nest, or a lot of the people that I touch. They feel a real great responsibility to employ 10, 15, 20 people, whatever the number. That feels like their extended family, that it's their job to provide for.
Yes.
So I think we have this overarching sense from the community. We need to get back to work somehow, safely, but we want to do it safely, but we want to get back to work.
Is that what you're hearing from your commercial clients as well? Because I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that would be the overwhelming theme. And to dovetail into that, let's get back to work. We want to do it in a manner where we don't just want to open up the doors without some precautions taken. Number one. Number two, we want those we do commerce with to feel safe to come out of their home and do business with us, that we've taken the right precautions. So it's a delicate balance. It's going to be interesting many, many years from now for us to look back on this and see how we did it. What mistakes did we make? How could we have done it better? But we're all in unprecedented waters right now. I think we really don't have too many folks to talk to about the Spanish flu at this point. And I guess that would be the closest parallel we could draw. And the world was much different. We were certainly not globalized in 1918 like we are today.
Right.
And so the world's changed a lot. Digital information, it gets out quick. We know pretty quickly now if there's hot spots, because we get a ding on the smartphone that tells us almost instantaneously when things are going wrong. So there is still a level of fear, but I do feel like what we're seeing is there's that spirit of, okay, I'm fearful, but I need to provide. We need to get back to work, and you see people ready to lean into this.
Absolutely. And I think, we've all had a whole lot of practice at the grocery store. We've all had a whole lot of practice at the Home Depot and Lowe's and all the other stores that are open. And it seems to be divided between people who are very nervous and are only going out when they absolutely need to, and of course following the guidelines. And then the other end of the extreme, whereby people are thinking, oh, to heck with all of this, I don't think a whole lot's going on. And of course, in Western North Carolina, our numbers are relatively small compared. I mean, we have numbers, but they're extremely small compared to the rest of the country. So that's validating some of those on that side of the argument, I think. And I don't see that many people in the middle, do you? It's either, oh my gosh, put your masks on and your gloves on and stay at home all the time. And then there's all this vilification going on of, heck, where's your social distancing? You know, you're seeing that
Right.
out in the street, you're seeing that on Facebook, you're seeing it in stores.
You know, I get back to the point where you said you either have you have kind of one thought, which is I'm ready to get I'm over it. I'm ready to get out and get moving again. And then you have the other thought, which is let's just stay sheltered for now. I don't feel safe. I can honestly say, Rowena, I think just personally, I vacillate from time at times. On some days you feel, gosh, you know, do I really want to go to the store? What if I get it? You know, and not so much if I get it, what if I pass it to someone who is more at risk than I am? So I go back and forth. I mean, there are days where I'm itching to go and other days where I say, okay, maybe this is the right approach. I don't like it, but I don't like feeling cooped up. I don't like the uncertainty that it brings, but at the same time, maybe it's the smart play for now. You know, I don't think we can economically outrun a vaccine, if that makes sense. I don't think we've got that time to wait as part of the problem till a vaccine comes out. I think we've got to look at other methods at this point.
No doubt. And we're not hearing from an awful lot of the companies right now. The media is really focusing on the numbers and hospitals and interviews and the such. I'm not seeing a whole lot from the businesses. And obviously there's a whole lot of people struggling out there right now. And just like you, it's almost like this roller coaster, isn't it? It's like, oh, it feels okay. And the summer's coming, you know, gosh, it's like the summer of Corona is here.
Right.
And the weather's getting nice outside. We all want to be outside. And then you go into the grocery store and some people have got masks on and it's a little bit scary. So yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling that way. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all of you. And thank you so much for coming on to chat to us today.
Thank you for having me, Rowena. Very much. Appreciate it. Stay safe.
See you again soon in person. Yeah, be safe.
Yes, thank you.
All right, darling. Goodbye.
All right.
This is Rowena Patton on Real Estate News Radio. I would love to hear your questions. Give us a call and I'll see you on the radio next week.